The U-boat SMU-15 belonged to the early German Type U-13 class. These were coastal submarines built for operations in the North and Baltic Seas. They featured a double hull design. Large ballast tanks surrounded the pressure hull, while the outer hull provided better buoyancy control and structural reliability compared to earlier single hull models. The design was based on the U-9 class, but featured a longer hull, a straight bow, and a flat deck. This significantly improved surfaced seakeeping and stability in rough waters. The length of the U-boat was 190 feet, the beam was almost 20 feet, and the draft was over 11 feet. Surface displacement was 508 long tons, and submerged displacement was 634 long tons. These characteristics allowed it to effectively patrol the coast while avoiding too much draft in shallow waters. Propulsion came from two shafts connected to cording kerosene engines. On the surface, they produced 1,200 horsepower, giving a surface speed of 14.8 knots. While submerged, two electric motors producing 1,160 horsepower provided a submerged speed of 10.7 knots. The range reached 4,000 nautical miles at a surface speed of 9 knots and 90 nautical miles at a submerged speed of 5 knots. The fuel capacity was perfectly calculated for long coastal missions. The surface power plant combined two 6-cylinder and two 8-cylinder cording kerosene engines in an asymmetrical layout. This was a unique feature of the Type U-13 class among early German U-boats, which was later abandoned in favor of standardized diesels in subsequent models. The design allowed a diving depth of 164 feet, reflecting the engineering limitations of the early 20th century. The crew consisted of 25 officers and enlisted men. Armament included four 17-inch torpedo tubes, two on the bow and two on the stern, with a total supply of 6 torpedoes. There was also one folding boat on board, which was considered standard for this class. The U-boat SMU-15 was ordered on February 23, 1909, as part of the expansion of the Type U-13 class, which consisted of 3 kerosene-powered coastal submarines. This order aligned with the German naval buildup program before the First World War, under the direction of the Kaiserliche Marine. The focus was on gradually improving submarine technologies to support the fleet and set up ambushes. However, in the overall strategy of Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz, U-boats still took a lower priority compared to surface ships. Construction took place at the Imperial Shipyard in Danzig, modern-day Gdansk. The keel was laid at the turn of 1909 and 1910. The total cost of one U-boat of this class was estimated at between $2,100,000 and $2,500,000 gold marks, highlighting the experimental nature of the program. According to official records, the construction of U-15 specifically cost $2,101,000 gold marks. This showed that the shipyard in Danzig was working more efficiently. The U-boat was launched on September 18, 1911. This became an important step toward creating more advanced diesel designs in the future. After launching on September 18, 1911, at the shipyard in Danzig, the U-boat U-15 underwent final fitting out and acceptance trials. These took place in the Baltic Sea and aimed to test the kerosene engines and overall design, which was an evolutionary step forward compared to the earlier U-9 class submarines. During these trials in 1912, even before its official commissioning, the main focus was on speed. Its surface speed reached 14.8 knots, and its submerged speed was 10.7 knots. No major issues were found at this stage. On July 7, 1912, U-15 officially joined the Imperial German Navy. Its first commander was Lieutenant Hans Adam. This marked full combat readiness after successful tests in the Baltic Sea. Throughout 1912 and 1913, the U-boat completed its first training patrols. The crew of 29 men, including 4 officers, practiced diving and learned to handle torpedoes, firing them from 2 bow and 2 stern 17.7-inch torpedo tubes. After completing training, U-15 was assigned to the 2nd U-boat flotilla, based on the island of Helgoland. There, the crew prepared for regular service in the North Sea. The boat was intended for both coastal patrolling and open sea deployments, and before the war began, its kerosene propulsion system, inherited from the U-13 class, was rigorously tested for reliability. This flotilla was a key part of the rapidly expanding German fleet under Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz. With growing tensions with Britain, Germany relied heavily on U-boats for reconnaissance and to support the main fleet. From 1912 to 1914, U-15 took part in routine peacetime exercises in the North and Baltic Seas. The crew honed their tactics for stealthy submerged approaches and torpedo attacks on training targets. Detailed records of every patrol have not survived, but it is known that the boat followed the standard program for its class. This involved torpedo firing drills and joint maneuvers with surface ships. Military doctrine at the time viewed submarines primarily as scouts to counter superior enemy battleship forces, rather than as independent raiders. In May 1914, U-15 joined the large-scale high seas fleet maneuvers. These showed the potential for joint operations, although limited speed and range still remained major tactical challenges. To maintain a high level of readiness, the crew roster was rotated periodically. Officers and sailors alternated service on board U-15 with training at the Helgoland shore base, since working on a submarine required incredible endurance. Maintenance cycles were highly intensive. The boats regularly underwent overhauls at local shipyards to fix reliability issues common to the U-13 class. This was necessary because by mid-1914, the Navy aimed to increase the number of combat-ready U-boats to 18 vessels. This period highlighted a shift in the Imperial Navy's priorities, as submarines were increasingly seen as vital for defensive coastal patrolling and reinforcing the main fleet. Even though their pre-war role was considered non-aggressive, this was when the foundation for their future combat deployment was laid. On August 1, 1914, the U-boat SMU-15 departed from Heligoland on its first and only combat patrol. It was commanded by Captain Lieutenant Richard Pohl. The boat was part of the second flotilla, and its main task was reconnaissance in the North Sea. Richard Pohl was born on October 11, 1882, in Paris. Before the war, he had built a successful career in the submarine fleet and even received the Spanish Order of Naval Merit. Taking command of U-15 was his baptism of fire at the start of the war. This mission coincided with Great Britain declaring war on Germany on August 4th. The main goal was to track the movements of the British fleet during the early stages of the conflict. Germany deployed its first U-boats to observe enemy ships and disrupt their operations whenever possible. This patrol was part of a larger operation. Several U-boats from the second flotilla, including sister ships U-13 and U-14, sailed together towards Scapa Flow in the Orkney Islands. This was the main base of the British Grand Fleet. The German command wanted to see if they could strike right at the heart of British naval power in the very first days of the war. The patrol lasted 9 days. For the entire time, the crew of U-15 tried to remain as stealthy as possible while gathering intelligence on British forces in the area. The U-boat failed to pull off a single successful attack or sink any enemy vessels. However, on the afternoon of August 8th, U-15 fired a torpedo at the British dreadnought HMS Monarch, which was conducting gunnery drills near Fair Isle. The torpedo missed its target. The actions of this U-boat perfectly illustrate the struggles that submariners faced early in the war. They had to rely on stealthy submerged maneuvers and careful navigation in dangerous waters to get into a good firing position, all without drawing the attention of overwhelming enemy surface forces. On August 9, 1914, U-15 suffered a critical failure of its courting kerosene engines. The U-boat was forced to stop surfaced in heavy fog. The crew desperately tried to fix the issue, and loud hammering sounds could be heard echoing from inside the pressure hull. This mechanical vulnerability highlighted the flaws in the power plants of Type U-13 class U-boats. They broke down often during long patrols, making them easy prey in enemy waters. The mobilization of the German fleet at the start of World War I began on August 1, 1914, after declaring war on Russia. The Imperial Navy sent its small submarine force to support the high seas fleet in the North Sea. Early U-boat tactics focused heavily on reconnaissance and defending the German Bight, as well as launching surprise attacks on enemy cruisers and light ships. Nobody was planning to hunt merchant ships or wage unrestricted submarine warfare just yet. They would not shift to that strategy until 1915. This approach was based on pre-war calculations. The command believed that U-boats could offset the numerical advantage of the British Grand Fleet by acting as scouts and setting ambushes. Peacetime training was geared much more toward operating alongside the main fleet rather than destroying trade routes on their own. The U-boat U-15 operated exactly like this as part of the Second Flotilla. Its job was to challenge British dominance in the North Sea, providing early warnings, scouting ahead of fleet sorties, and keeping enemy patrols near Heligoland on edge. The role of the flotilla fit perfectly into the overall plans of the High Seas Fleet. For example, it supported cruiser raids like the operation in the U-15 area in mid-August 1914, when U-boats escorted surface ships to hunt down and attack British forces. The Battle of Heligoland Bight on August 28, 1914, further highlighted these priorities. British incursions into the German defensive zone forced an increase in U-boat patrols. They were meant to deter further breakthroughs and trap light enemy ships. However, due to technical and operational limitations, the direct participation of U-boats in combat still remained minimal. Type U-13 U-boats, such as U-15, clearly demonstrated the technological limits of early 1914. They could cover about 4,000 nautical miles with a surfaced speed of 9 knots and reach a submerged speed of nearly 11 knots. Their kerosene engines constantly broke down, making these submarines suitable only for coastal reconnaissance rather than extended combat patrols. Compared to later diesel and electric models that appeared from 1916 onward, these boats struggled to get into a good attack position against faster British warships. Because of this, their role in the North Sea was reduced strictly to defense. On August 9, 1914, during its first patrol that started on August 1st from Heligoland, the U-15 was forced to surface in the North Sea due to an engine failure. The submarine sat dead in the water in thick fog and became highly vulnerable. The British light cruiser Birmingham from the 1st Light Cruiser Squadron, sailing 30 miles ahead of the main fleet, spotted the U-boat at about 3:50 in the morning. The distinct sound of hammers could be heard from inside as the crew desperately tried to fix the engine. The cruiser Birmingham, under the command of Captain Arthur Duff, had been commissioned just a year prior. It was one of the Royal Navy's newest light cruisers, about 450 feet long, with a displacement of almost 5,400 tons and 25,000 horsepower engines. With a maximum speed of over 26.5 knots, it outclassed the damaged U-boat in every way. Birmingham closed in immediately and opened fire, but missed. As the crew of U-15 tried to submerge, the cruiser rammed the submarine right in the center at full speed. The impact sliced the U-boat in half, and it went down almost instantly. All 25 crew members of U-15 died. This engagement marked the first time in World War I that an enemy surface ship destroyed a submarine by ramming. It highlighted the mechanical vulnerability of the first German U-boats and the effectiveness of aggressive surface tactics against them. The British confirmed the destruction of U-15. They had seen the boat surfaced, heard the sounds of repairs from inside, and after the impact, only debris was left on the water. Birmingham's logbook recorded the course of the battle, and in contemporary reports and a message from First Lord of the Admiralty Winston Churchill, the cruiser was credited with destroying the first German U-boat of the war. Churchill sent a message to the Lord Mayor of the city of Birmingham. It was quickly printed in local newspapers as proof that the Royal Navy was ready to face the still unstudied threat from beneath the water. This sparked a great deal of pride among the city's residents. The light cruiser itself sustained minor damage to its bow, but after temporary repairs, it continued its service. The thick fog and the rapid sinking of the severed hull left absolutely no chance of rescue for the crew of U-15. 25 men served under the command of Captain Lieutenant Richard Pohl. Along with the commander, Lieutenant Otto Zerath from the town of Kaukoman, 33-year-old Chief Engineer Oskar Grundler from Rixdorf, helmsman Reinhold Queiser from Silesia, and mechanic Heinrich Witter also perished. Their names were preserved in the surviving casualty lists of the Imperial German Navy. Because of the dense fog in the North Sea and the instant loss of the submarine, searches for any survivors were not even started. When U-15 failed to return from its patrol, the German Navy presumed the submarine and its entire crew were lost. This was standard for missing U-boats with no radio contact. The status remained unconfirmed until the British announced they had sunk it. During that same mission, the sister ship of U-15, U-13, also vanished, which caused a lot of concern about heavy early losses. The third submarine of this class, U-14, survived the operation. It served for nearly another year under Captain Lieutenant Walter Schwieger. Schwieger later became infamous for commanding U-20 when it sank HMS Lusitania in May 1915, but U-14 itself was lost in June 1915. This meant that none of the three Type U-13 submarines survived the first year of the war. Losing U-Boat 15 on its very first wartime patrol was a real blow to morale within the German submarine service. It really hammered home the mechanical unreliability of the Type U-Boat 13 boats. Their engines were always giving them trouble, which made it tough to dive in a hurry. Because of this, the Navy had to switch up its early war tactics. They put a lot more focus on engine maintenance and became much more careful when operating on the surface, trying to cut down the risks they faced in the North Sea. The wreck of SM U-Boat 15 now lies in the North Sea, close to Fair Isle, Scotland. This submarine was rammed and sunk there on August 9, 1914. Historical records tell us it happened in really thick fog during its first patrol. According to the logbook of HMS Birmingham, the precise location was 58 degrees, 23 minutes north latitude and 2 degrees, 5 minutes east longitude. This spot is about 130 miles east-southeast of the Orkney Islands. It marks the very first time a German U-boat was lost to an enemy warship in World War I. Eyewitnesses from HMS Birmingham, the light cruiser that took the submarine down, reported that the impact literally cut U-Boat 15 clean in half. The bow and stern broke apart right after the collision. The severed pieces bobbed on the surface for a short while before sinking rapidly. This was a clear sign of massive structural damage right in the middle of the boat. Nobody even attempted to salvage or recover the submarine at that time. Based on naval reports from that era, the wreck was left completely shattered and in pieces. After the war, assessments of North Sea U-boat losses were based on these initial reports. Experts figured the debris from U-Boat 15 was spread all over the ocean floor because of how badly the boat was destroyed and the powerful tidal currents. In this area, environmental factors like shifting seabed sands and constant currents play a double role. Over the decades, they can help preserve sections of a wreck that get buried while slowly wearing away anything left exposed. Early searches for German submarines between the world wars were mostly unsuccessful. For a very long time, the only things historians knew about U-Boat 15 were its approximate location and its presumed condition. The wreck of SM U-Boat 15 was finally found in 2021 as part of a project to identify World War I submarine losses in the North Sea. However, a lot of the details about the discovery are still unpublished. We still don't know the exact team that found it, the confirmed coordinates, or just how broken up the wreck actually is. Before this, the only official record of the site was a United Kingdom Hydrographic Office wreck card that was opened in 1974. It contained just one unverified entry based on wartime naval records and was marked for filing purposes only. That really shows just how little concrete data existed before 2021. Finding it again marks the first confirmed identification of the submarine since it sank in 1914. But as of 2024, no detailed archaeological surveys or high-quality images of the wreck have been released to the public. Ongoing maritime heritage projects in the region suggest there's potential for future non-invasive assessments to evaluate the site. But so far, no specific plans for U-Boat 15 have been announced.